Women of Reddit, what's your cringy nice guy story? You/non-nameless responded. I was friends with a co-worker. We had hung out a few times socially after work, and got along well, but it never really occurred to me to wonder if he was interested in me. At that point in my life, I did not get a lot of male attention, and honestly was pretty cringy myself, but that's for a different thread. Anyway, we were walking side by side, and I guess he went to put his arm around me. It surprised me, like that someone is tapping you on the opposite shoulder trick, and I turned abruptly. He took it as incredibly rude, gave me an angry lecture about leading people on and how disgusting you make someone feel when you literally flinch from their touch, and called me a bitch. Sorry for my reflexes. About a week later, another friend came to me at work to let me know that guy was telling everyone I was a whore who was sleeping my way through the department. Nice. The dumbest part was that I probably would have gone on a date with him if he'd asked. I just had no idea he was thinking along those lines. Bullet dodged. You/caffeine and cardio responded. This all played out on social media, never met the guy in person. He found me through some posts I made on someone else's discussion thread, and tried to derail the conversation to how good I looked. A couple hours later, he messaged me. We go back and forth a little bit, him waxing poetic about how lovely I was and how he was looking to settle down, and how every woman he'd been with, at least 50, had shit on him in some way. I tried to be polite, and let him down easy since he wasn't what I was looking for at the time. He quickly got pissed off and ranted about how it wasn't fair, and how fucked up it was that I wouldn't at least give him a chance, until I lost patience and blocked him. And that's how L became 51. You/sad refresh responded. This actually just happened recently. My good friend from college and I, along with other friends from our program, went out to a bar to celebrate finishing our degree. He kept feeding me shots, but I figured everyone just wanted to be drunk and have a good time. The night is coming to an end and I'm quite incapacitated. My good friend frantically approaches me saying that he had just seen a guy put something in my drink, which I had just finished. He told me that I would soon be unconscious, and it was best that he take me back to his apartment so he could take care of me. Being heavily drunk and also quite scared, I agreed and he helped me back to his apartment. After making me something to eat and giving me some water, we set up camp for the night on his couch. He put on a movie and he said he would sit and watch me sleep to make sure I didn't throw up or anything. As I started to doze off, he started touching me, first on my feet and knees and then my upper thigh. I confronted him about it and he said after everything he had done he felt he deserved compensation. I laughed it off, but after he tried to make a move again, I got angry and we began fighting. He exposed to me that no one had put anything in my drink, and it was all a ploy to allow him to make his move. After some more arguing, he decided it was best I left, and he kicked me out of his apartment at 3 a.m. while I was still considerably drunk. This is someone whom I've trusted and spent 4 years being friends with. Safe to say I'll be a lot more speculative with future male friends. You/Mrixender 1001 responded. Right after high school, a guy came out of the woodworks and told me that he had a crush on me. I thought it was nice, but I just did not like him. He was always buying me presents and dropping them off at my mom's house. I always said thanks, but told him I just wasn't interested. We had the same group of friends, so I would see him from time to time. When I would see him, he would pull me aside and politely ask me to go on a date with him. I told him that I just didn't see him that way. One day, I ran into him at the store and he asked me out again, and I went on this long rant about how I was going off to college and I didn't want to be tied down. He ended up asking me out again. I ended up walking away. He came up behind me and pushed me. He has this evil look in his eye, and I ran to my car and called my mom. He ended up messaging me a couple days later and telling me that he's just mad because God told him I was the one he was going to marry. I blocked him on all social media and my phone. He still managed to get my new address when I moved off to college, and one time he drove almost an hour to my apartment. He knocked on my door and he handed me a bag of my favorite candy. I flipped out like I should have done many times before, and I threatened to call the cops and get a restraining order. I've seen him once in the last 7 years with his wife and new baby. I hope he has changed. You/Littlefinger's throat responded. So not a stereotypical nice guy really, but I met him at a party, gave him a ride home, and after belting out "Don't Stop Believing" together, he asked for my number. We went on one date and texted for a week. Then Saturday morning, I woke up to 50+ texts that started with asking what I was doing, sleeping because I worked in the morning, and went all the way up to I should just kill myself since no one wants to talk to me. I told him that was unacceptable, as I had already told him I worked Saturday morning, but even if I hadn't, there's no reason to text me over 50 times. If I'm not answering, I'm not answering. He whined about being so nice, and how good he was to me and blah 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 blah. Thankfully, when my friends asked why I was ignoring such a nice guy, showing them the texts was enough for them to drop it. You/deleted responded. I'd forgotten about this until I read this thread. Like a lot of these stories, LVE had more than my fair share of nice guys, TM, but this guy was definitely the worst. This guy messaged me on OkCupid. He was 62. Not necessarily a deal breaker, except I was 20 and he was a dozen years older than my parents. I said thanks but no thanks. I was uncomfortable with that much of an age difference. Good luck out there. He flipped. Non-stop messages vacillating between how I would regret this, wheedling, compliments and apologies, and call me a whore, a slut, a blueballer, etc. Literally dozens upon dozens of messages a day. He was a lawyer. He had ways of making me regret this. I would never do as good as him. No other man would treat me so well, and I'm a whore if I say no. On and on. This was many years ago. At the time, you could report someone for harassment on OkCupid, but it didn't stop that person from messaging you. Finally, I told him I would meet him in the city, at a popular college bookstore, at 2 p.m. Wouldn't you know it, I somehow forgot to go. After another day or two of berating for standing him up, he got the hint and disappeared. Edit. I definitely should have phrased that better. Older than me was not a deal breaker. But, especially when I was 20, I limited age difference to in the same decade. This guy called me ageist a lot, as if it would change my mind. Now that I'm a 30-year-old spinster, I've relaxed my ageist ways. But 62 would still be a deal breaker. You/damsel sexbang responded. I used to work at GameStop and the building was connected to a Starbucks. He recognized me from high school, but was a year under me, so I had no idea who he was. I generally kept to myself. He talked to me as I waited for my order, and he seemed pretty cool. A couple weeks later he tells me I'm pretty and if we could hang out. I'm engaged, so I told him outright. He promised me that he just wanted to be friends, and I'm apparently a very gullible person. He'd get me free Starbucks, tell me I'm a great artist, yada yada. About 2 weeks later he asks me to meet him at a bar because he's upset about something. Trying to be a good friend, I go to comfort him. So, I go to the bar, and he's already drunk. I didn't drink because if things turned sour, I could just leave. He gets all feely on my thigh. I tell him I'm uncomfortable, so he stops, apologizes that he's drunk. I kick his ass at pool and he asks me to go smoke with him. I don't smoke cigarettes, but sure I'll go talk. He pushed me against the wall, kissed me, and put his hand in my pants. I fought him back, but a dude leaving the bar got him off of me. No nice guy will ever be trusted again. TLDR, he used my gullible nature against me and tried to rape me. You/Vangelabian responded. Met up with a guy from collegeclub.com, and we had planned for a quick bite to eat. I had forgotten my wallet, so he came to my dorm room with me to quickly grab it. We get there and he immediately starts looking around at all my photos etc. around the room. He finds my Homer Simpson slippers and a rooster beanie Boo my nephew had left there. He takes the rooster and stuffs it in Homer's mouth and makes it move, as if the slipper was chewing, and says, "Look at me. I am vain. I create suffering for animals so I can feast. Selfish hungry bitch." I was speechless, but then he opens my drawer and starts throwing makeup around saying, "This is tested on animals, I am vain. Animals suffer for my beauty," and then opened my wardrobe and started throwing clothes around saying, "These things have been made in sweatshops." My friend called security on him. Edited to add, this was not our first date. More like 6th or 7th, and every other time the guy was a peach. He was considerate, a great listener, and made me laugh. All in all, a really, seemingly, genuine nice guy. He had never previously mentioned being vegan, we had went on coffee dates, and he ordered black nothing else. And this was to be our first time going to a restaurant together. Thankfully we didn't, because it was for weekend brunch, and I would have got the bacon. You/spacecrafts responded. I went on a first date with a guy, casual date for coffee. It wasn't terrible, but it was obvious that we didn't really click that well. He did the typical nice guy stuff during the date, where he talked about how he was different from other guys, knew how to treat a woman, some talking down on gym brothers, etc. I ended the date pretty quickly, as I wasn't really feeling it, and had just gotten off of a midnight shift, so it was past my bedtime. He insisted on walking me to my car and opening the door for me. Fine, whatever. Then he hugged me, and when we went to break apart, he tried kissing me. I turned my face and he immediately got agitated, blocked me from entering my car and said, "What? No kiss." I'm a pretty easygoing and tolerant person, but that was the first time something like that had ever happened, and I immediately felt a slight bit of fear, as the guy was blocking my car, and was about 6 feet 4 inches. So much larger than me. I immediately put on my super serious face and said, "No, sorry. I really need to be getting home now." And luckily he moved. Took a bit of a break from dating after that. You/deleted responded. Met a guy at college who seemed like a wayward out-of-towner that wasn't having any luck in the friend department. Word was he moved up from Cali. So we started working as semi-study buddies. He was taking courses for a different major, but they were courses I had done already. He knew I had a boyfriend, but decided one day to ask me to dinner. I specified as friends. And his response was something like sure, or it could be a date. The fact that I was in a long-term relationship didn't seem to make a difference to him. So I declined. After that my courses got switched to online courses, so I stopped seeing him as much. Until he added me on Facebook, and started trying to ask me out again. I finally told him no, that if he couldn't respect my current relationship enough to lay off the date attempts, that we didn't need to be friends. Then he went uber religious on me. Started preaching at me constantly that he was terrified about my destiny of going to hell, and wanted to save my soul so that didn't happen. Basically, just admonishing every single decision I ever made as a person and determined like no other to convince me that my sinful ways would undermine me in every way. Kept saying he didn't want to see his friend go through that. I told him forcing his religion down my throat was the surefire way of pushing me away permanently, and proceeded to block him. I gave him a lot of chances to understand that what he was doing wasn't cool, but he was so convinced that he was just being a nice guy. You/matrix_suicide responded. Well. There have been many, but one in particular takes the cake. When I was a freshman in college, I met a guy through mutual friends that seemed to be really cool. I was really intrigued by his intellect and what I perceived to be kindness. Zero red flags from this guy. He seemed immensely compassionate due to the suffering he'd had to endure growing up. He had cancer, and had to get a testicle removed, and has also discovered his father hanging one day after his mom up and left, among other things. Anyways, I invited him over to my dorm on our first date, and before long we went from discussing literature, to taking the danger highway to the Bo Nez on E. After sex, he says the first time I talked to you, which was over the internet mind you, dear readers, decided I would tell you I loved you after the 4th date. I kind of chuckle to myself and brush it off, because this isn't the first time this kind of thing has been said to a girl after sex, right? Anyways, he then asks me if he's the best sex of my life, and if I'm ready to be exclusive. I say something to the effect of I think you're awesome, but I don't want to rush into things. Let's have a few more dates and see how this goes. He immediately gets up, puts his clothes on, tells me you're just like every other whore who doesn't want a man with one fucking testicle, and leaves. Never heard from him again. You/Porterosa responded. I had a date with a guy I met through OkCupid. When he found out that I was, at the time, writing erotica for a living, he put his hand very gently on mine and asked, with all the sincerity in the world, "Who hurt you?" "No one hurt me, guy. I got paid money to write stories about people dicking each other, and I had a whale of a time." He absolutely would not believe that I enjoyed my job, and that I wasn't lashing out, as a result of some obvious sexual trauma LD had in my past that he could somehow save me from. God only knows how actual sex workers cope on dates if that's a common approach to people who aren't terrified to openly discuss penises. There was no second date. You/Fugors responded. I was friends with this dude for over 2 years. Nice dude, but we had different views on things, and I just wasn't interested in him in that way. He tried to ask me out before, but I tried my best to tell him I only liked him as a friend. Fast forward, I get a boyfriend and the dude hated him. He tried to tell me lies about him, and say he was flirting with girls behind my back, and just making up terrible lies about my boyfriend. After I called him out on it, he was embarrassed, but tried to put to blame on me and shame me for dating someone else when he asked me out first. I still talk to him sometimes, but he still posts things on his Facebook about how girls lead nice guys on and date other people. You/Zizabeth responded. I had started to see this guy, we had a lot in common, and he was pretty cool, but I started getting weird vibes from him. It came to a head when we hung out 3 times, and he blew up at me for not inviting him to my house. At this point I decided I was done Sky. I tell him politely that while he's nice, he's just not for me. Shortly thereafter I start dating someone else. Nice guy pops up every now and again for small talk. I'm polite, but distant, and I inform him LV started seeing someone else. He gets offended by this and proceeds to tell me how much better he would be for me, but I just didn't give him a chance. At this point I tell him that while I appreciate how he feels, I'm just not about it. He goes away for a couple of weeks, then starts messaging me every couple of weeks asking if LVE broken up with my BF. I'm not responding to him, so after about 2 months, he decides to tell me how much he cares about me, and he can't believe that I would have ever treated him this way. He's been telling his friends about me. I was special. And my favorite part, you used to be this sweet southern belle, and now you're just a southern bitch. I explained to him that his extreme reaction and inability to listen to me tell him I'm not interested was very unattractive. And while it's unfortunate that it didn't work out, things would have been resolved and he could have moved in forever ago had he just listened when I first told him how I felt. He then messaged back, blocked bitch. I don't know that I'll ever recover. You/Kusk_Kusk responded. I was friends with a guy who was kind of nerdy, but really sweet. He was overweight, but he wore it well. Nice hair, great skin. So not the hottest guy in the world, but far from the worst. He lived at home and worked a shitty minimum wage job, but he was in his mid-20s, so it wasn't that weird at his age to still be struggling. I accepted his friend's request on Facebook, along with another mutual girlfriend of ours. The girl told me she had a huge crush on the guy. She had the same nerdy interests as him, and she was pretty hot. Curvy, big-boobed Italian chick. Apparently she asked him out, and he said they should stay friends. Imagine my surprise when I saw post after post of him whining about being single, how no girls like him, etc. How the sexy redhead, who looked like the Little Mermaid, was a bitch for dodging his eye contact. How he just wanted a little Japanese girlfriend, who looked like an anime character. The real kicker came when he had his guy friend make a post that basically said, "You're all pieces of shit for not hooking up this guy with your single female friends. I know for a fact you all know single girls, and you're not even trying to set him up." I told him that I wouldn't trust him with my worst enemy, and blocked them both. The fucking entitlement was astounding, as was the complete lack of self-awareness. Apparently having your guy friend making a post whining on your behalf is perfectly normal for some people. You/Miss_Keys responded. We met on OkCupid, and after like 2 weeks decided to go meet. We both weren't into coffee, so we decided to eat a dinner together. At his place. We agreed to meet at the mall to buy groceries. He couldn't decide even one thing, but when I would take a certain brand he would mention how his grandmother would take some other. At the end I made him to pick at least one thing appetizer, thinking of soup or something, so he picked blueberries. I paid. We came to his apartment. He couldn't cook, which I didn't mind, but he didn't even feel like helping. While I was making the sauce he mentioned things like that I am not intelligent enough, because I suck at math and wasn't interested in it when he was reading his math book to me for 5 to 10 minutes, that it annoys him me not being interested in video games. He blushed when I joked and said word pussy, and also got frustrated when he read Jessamine to me and I wasn't that interested. Then we finally sat and ate. He commented how his mother does it better. But he also ate pretty much everything. Then all of a sudden he stood up and said, "Now we should kiss and cuddle." Of course not. I offered to wash the dishes. He didn't even help. I felt sorry for him the entire time, that's why I just didn't leave. You/the_fire_eagle responded. Ordinary guy here, here's my reverse nice guy story. I get out of work, it's fucking cold outside. I stop and get a hot chocolate from a walk-up vendor. I am vaguely aware that someone is in line behind me. I'm feeling charitable. I pay for 2, tell the guy I'm paying for the person behind me, please tell them to pay it forward. Take my chocolate, pay, walk away and don't look back. Never even glanced at the person behind me. Walk to the corner and I hear, "Excuse me." I ignore it because it's a city and I don't respond to yelling. This woman rushes up and tells me that she's flattered LD by her a hot chocolate, but she really and truly could accept, and goes on about how she has a boyfriend. I say, "Just pay it forward." I start to cross the street walking away from her. She follows telling me how serious she is with her boyfriend, and they are practically engaged, and how it would be weird for him if she tells him she let some guy buy her a drink. This actually went on for around a half block, then I told her that she didn't have to drink her hot chocolate. Then I quickly ducked down the stairs to a subway station. I didn't intend to ride, just to extricate myself from the situation. Now I just ignore everyone in the city like everyone else. You/Queen Potato responded. Over the summer I worked with another intern, who was a couple years younger than me. He was apparently very interested in me. He would ask questions about me to other interns in Chinese, talk about me when I wasn't looking, etc. But I have a femme pref, so I wasn't really romantically interested. He seemed like a nice guy though initially. He asked me a couple times to go hang out with him and do stuff. After talking it over with my friends I decided to relent, because hey, why not try it out? The date went nicely, but I decided not to take things any further. But later, When we were all attending a professional conference and staying at the same hotel, he came up to my room to ask me a question about the product we were marketing and then tried to pop up on me. I asked him to leave, but he wouldn't, so I hid in the bathroom and asked some other interns to help so it wouldn't happen again. When he was confronted about his behavior, everyone was at a restaurant. He got so enraged that he took the water glass and threw it at the other intern. It smashed against the wall and shattered. He apparently got fired after that. I was lucky enough that I wasn't present at that dinner meeting, but my first thought was, oh shit, that could have been me. After that whole debacle, LVE decided to just stay out of the dating business, so I don't intend on having another nice guy story ever again. You/Lana90 responded. Matched a dude on Tinder. I swiped because he looked super familiar. Figured out after talking a bit he was my friend's boyfriend's old friend, and we may have partied together when we were younger. My Tinder profile makes a point of saying that because, at the time, I had sole custody of my toddler, I had extremely limited free time, and was mostly there for conversation, and if we seemed to hit it off we could go from there. So he and I are talking, he's playing this wicked sob story about how hard his life is, how he's the sweetest guy ever, and no one ever gives him the chance, blah blah blah. Constantly asking me to hang out, even after I explained that I can't afford a babysitter at the moment, and honestly I just wasn't feeling it with him. I eventually told him I wasn't interested in a relationship, and obviously couldn't give him the attention he wanted or needed. He proceeded to blow up at me. Tried throwing in my face that I went to a party the other day, but couldn't make time for him. Mind you, the party I went to was a kid's Halloween party my friend and her boyfriend threw for all our toddler and baby-aged kids. He continued to berate me about how horrible I was and how he just didn't understand why he wasn't a priority for me, on and off for a few weeks until I blocked him. I later learned from his old friend and neighbor that he was a drunk and total bum that literally always played the same exact sob stories to any girl he meets. He also actively pursued and hooked up with my friend's wife. You/ZombieEp00 responded. He was my best friend. I'd hang out, stay the night with him all the time, totally platonic, no sex or hints at it happening. After a couple years, he started doing meth. I had no idea because I didn't know what to look for at the time. One day, I'm at home watching a roommate play video games, and he messages me, saying he's in love with me, and it would totally be a confidence booster if I'd fuck him. He is depressed and needs the confidence boost. Because I cared about him, I politely declined, saying I didn't have an attraction to him that way. He flipped. Began saying I was heartless and not a true friend for not doing him this favor. I argued with him for at least 2 hours. After hearing him say I was heartless and that I wasn't a friend for sleeping with him, I told him to fuck off, because I couldn't take his constant self-deprecation and pity for himself without doing anything to change, like stop doing meth. And I blocked him. We spoke again after a couple years. He apologized for his behavior, but our friendship isn't the same. We rarely talk these days. You/AllBeefQueef responded. I was making friends with this dude and it was going great. I'm asexual, but a lot of people don't know what that is, so I usually just say that I'm not interested in ever dating anyone. Anyway, dude knew I was utterly disinterested in anything but friendship, and still I received a text one night that said, "When are you going to let me take you out?" So I responded, "I don't go out, you know that." He said, "Okay, we won't go out. How about I come over to your place?" At that point I was kind of irked. He knew exactly what I meant, but was pretending he misunderstood. IDKY, did he think he could use semantics to trick me into dating him? So I spelled it out for him. I said I was asexual, and that LD never dated anyone and never would, so of course his response was, "Except for me D." At that point I was done. I just kept rejecting him from all the angles he came from. He wouldn't leave me alone. Eventually I just ghosted him. He gave me no fucking choice. It's not the worst nice guy encounter LVE had, but it's the most confusing. I said no like 10 times. I was obviously a waste of time if he wanted to date instead of being friends. Why do some guys just keep asking? I feel really guilty when I have to reject people, and I'm assuming most guys don't love rejection. It's not a good time for anyone. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Please like and subscribe for more videos like this one.